Thanks for joining us today for part 2 of our series on money. If you missed it, I encourage you, go back to yesterday's video so that you can end up catching up as we're going into this deep dive around money and stewardship. We talked about 3 areas that you can put your money. You can give it, you can save it, or you can spend it. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into giving. So join with me with Eric Waite in our conversation about money. So looking at this kind of main focus of the biblical principles of why we should be looking at this from a giving standpoint and a spiritual aspect, a lot of people struggle with the idea of giving when they feel financially strapped. How does giving actually benefit us?
Yeah, I think it's a prioritization process as we have, money in our lives, and the world would tell us that we should choose a lifestyle first, and then we would, probably pay off our debts, handle our taxes, do some saving and investing, and then at the very end, we'll see what's left and we'll decide to base our giving on that. And in God's economy, he actually flips that paradigm on its head, and he says that we should give first, then pay our debts, pay our taxes, and then at the end, we figure out our lifestyle. So it's a great paradigm shift to see it through God's lens.
So it's God's lens, but practically, how do you feel like this plays out? What's the difference maker when we start with the giving first?
Yeah, it really sets our heart straight with God. It really says, as a Christ follower, what's one of the best ways that I can honor my relationship with God? And giving is an act of worship. So when we can say, as a Christ follower, I want to honor God with what he's given me, the way that I can do that is through my gifts and tithing.
So 2 Corinthians 9:7 talks about giving cheerfully. And I know I've benefited from being able to give and to be able to see the results. But so often it's like holding on to it tightly and just someone pulling it out of our hands on the giving side. Why does this create joy in us?
Yeah, it really does. And I think it's when we can understand the mindset shift and we start to honor God first with our giving, and he actually talks about first fruit giving being a principle for us to follow. The rest of our life, ironically, in the experience that I've seen, is it just starts to fall into place. We start spiritually seeking God's obedience first, and when we do that with our finances, and when we do that, the levels of joy and happiness. It's not always easy. Don't get me wrong. It's not a perfect recipe for anything that's going to happen in the rest of our lives. But I can tell you, over time after time after time, and story after story that I've met with people that have shared, when they figured this out, the peace and joy and comfort that came into their lives, even as they navigated difficult financial situations in the future, when they understood giving first principles.
Being involved with church finances for as long as you have, how have you seen this play out to where when people end up starting to give first, it changes things for them financially?
Yeah, it's not always, and there's a dangerous slippery slope that can happen, in the church world where they say this thing called the prosperity gospel, where it's like, well, if you give, then you'll be blessed financially on the other side. And that is not at all what Scripture says, and not at all what this principle would be. But what I can tell you is that I've stacks of letters of people that have met with me and said, it didn't seem like it was going to make sense. On paper, we went through everything, and it was like, gosh, if I were to trust God in this area and give, the math just doesn't add up. But you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to go ahead and step out on faith and do this and put my trust in God first. And then there's just been story after story after story of things that have helped them, not always financially, but definitely blessings in life that they've seen starting to follow the principle. And so like you said, in the passage in Corinthians where it touches on, God doesn't want our money, he wants our heart. And so if he wanted our money, he'd just take it. And so when we start to follow his principles and understand it's really a heart issue more so than a finance issue.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation today with Eric as we go through this series. If you'd like to be able to receive the entire conversation, simply text in the keyword money to this phone number right here, 844-921-0220. Or as always, the link to this class is also in the description of this video on YouTube. We'll see you tomorrow.